Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Rewilded Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Lydia Joy. We are deep in the heart of Libra season now, with only about a week left before the energy begins to shift to Scorpio season. And Libra season's that in-between time where we're asked to find balance, beauty, and harmony, even in the midst of change. And honestly, that feels really aligned with where I'm at right now. It's been about 2 weeks since my last episode, and while I've been aiming to share a podcast weekly, I've had to honor my own process over here. My body has its own rhythm, and sometimes it just says, we don't have a message to share today. And I've learned to trust that. And it's been just about 6 weeks since my last hair test. And I have been leaning into life with the new insights from that data, making gentle adjustments, noticing what shifts, what surfaces, what settles. It's actually been really profound. Um, Old patterns have been rising up, you know, definitely not to punish me, even though sometimes it feels that way, but really just to be witnessed, to be met differently so I can stop reenacting what's no longer aligned. The patterning that needs to be interrupted, broken, and calibrated, right? And I realized I needed to pause and process that before I came back here to speak with you all again. So today, I want to have a conversation about what healing really is, not just in theory, not just in lab results or protocols, but as a lived cyclical process. Because, it doesn't happen in an instant, right? In seconds, like we all want, right? Like on demand. You can't have healing on demand like you can, everything else these days. Um, it really happens in seasons. It's really regenerative, or it should be. Like that's how we should be viewing it, right? It's rhythmic. It asks us to slow down, to listen, to, our body really needs to integrate instead of be forced forward. And so that's what I want to dive into today, kind of that deeper truth of what it means to heal in cycles and really to navigate the messy middle, I'm going to call it. When you're, down a path, working on your health, right? And to understand how presence, guidance, and grounded support really create the environment where real restoration unfolds. So, you know, one thing I've noticed both in myself and in nearly everyone I work with is that we tend to treat healing kind of like maybe like a checklist. Like, okay, do this, fix that, balance this marker, hit that target, and yet the body, it doesn't really move like that. It moves in cycles, it unfolds, it recalibrates and integrates at its own pace, just like nature. And when I look back over the past several weeks, what's become clear is that every shift my body made was just a signal, right? A way of communicating to me. And sometimes it would be through more energy and ease and noticing like, I really don't feel like I need to take any supports with me when I travel. Like, I'm good. Like, maybe you have like a backup thing you feel like you need everywhere you go, right? Like, I lived that way for years. And now I'm just leaving my house. I'm like, I don't need anything. I'm good. And sometimes there are some discomforts that arise, right? Could be some type of tightness or sleep shift or, emotions that just come, wow, just like, whoa, like, where did these come from? What is going on? And that's what I want to talk about today, those signals, right? Because when we can start to see anything, symptoms, sensations, emotions, not as like problems to fix, but really as these intelligent communications from an adaptive system our body, that's always, 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 always working to restore balance, homeostasis, right? And that doesn't mean instant perfect balance, right? Like, it doesn't mean like recalibrate, perfect, here we are, meh, right? Like, it's just always trying to adapt, recalibrate, restabilize as best it can in the moment, right? Okay. And so I really think the entire framework of how we relate to our health begins to shift from like this, like, "Ugh, I'm trying to control it, right? Like, to more of a collaboration, right? From even like suppression, like, try to suppress it. Oh my gosh, I can't have this back pain, or I can't have this bloating right now, or I can't have this crappy sleep. Let me take a pill, right? Like, it shifts that suppressive feeling, desire, urgency, right, to more of just trying to understand our what our body is saying, right? From trying to fix ourselves, like, to really facilitating, what may serve us best, right? So let's begin there with the signal. Because every healing journey, every layer of transformation starts with the body speaking to you, right? It's showing you something, whether it's like a patch of eczema on your finger, or a sudden UTI, or gosh, the list could go on, right? Like lower back pain that you haven't had in years, or just a sudden headache, when you thought you weren't getting headaches anymore, whatever it is, right? When those things occur, you know, we get to tune in, right? We get to listen. And what does that even mean, right? Like, we don't know how to listen to our body. Our body shows us and we're like, I don't like this. So I don't want to hear what you have to say by this like thing that annoys me, right? But that's the signal. That's the body's language, right? It speaks in these signs, right? Like, I had a recent client who, I guess we started her story at like a thyroid nodule, right? And then it went from there, and eventually it was like a fibroid, and then eventually it was something else, right? Like, some of us have different things than each other, right? Like, somebody else may have like pain and heaviness in their legs, and somebody else may have pain in their chest that makes them feel like they can't breathe. Like, right, there's all these ways your body, my body, so and so's body can speak to us in signs, and it can be very different from person to person. And these are not random. They're never, ever, ever random. They're really just messages from a very intelligent system that's just trying to adapt and communicate and maintain that homeostasis, right? Balance. Very appropriate for Libra season. So, but the problem that we have been conditioned in this culture, in Western society, modern day, is that the signal appears, it gets on our nerves, and the first thing we want to do is suppress it, make it stop, make it stop. I don't like it, make it stop, right? We medicate. Eventually, sometimes we go somewhere and they're like, well, we're just going to have to remove it, right? Like, let's cut it out of you, right? But here's the truth, whether it's a nodule, a fibroid, migraine, a pain in your legs that won't go away, or, whatever it is, those symptoms are not the full story, right? They're not the root. Like, we hear about the root cause all the time, right? They're really just expressions of deeper systemic imbalances. And physically speaking, it could be a lot. It could be sluggish detox pathways, mineral bottleneck, genetic predispositions, mutations that are challenging you, right? Like slow metabolism, right? Sluggish thyroid, cell danger response, like all these like physical, but like it could also be there because of a long-term survival pattern that you learned in childhood, right? Like, it could be so much more than that. And it could be you were exposed to umpteen things and your body just didn't have the capacity to deal with it. and it held this, held that, held this, held this, held that, da 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 da, right? And the body's like, all right, we got to adapt, we got to adapt, we got to adapt. And one day it shows up in a sign of something that's there that you don't like, where the body was all along trying to protect you, keep you safe. And finally, one day it's like, this is what I have to do now to deal with all of this, right? Do you see what I'm getting at? And so when that signal shows up, whatever it is, right? Maybe it's chronic, maybe it's there for a long time. Maybe we knew about it for a while and eventually we just finally realized, okay, I actually have to face this. I need to understand this, right? If we focus only on suppressing that signal, that symptom, that body speaking its language to you, the body isn't going to stop once you suppress the signal, right? Because the true issue behind that was not even looked at or dealt with in the layers that it was created or compounded into. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, the body will adapt, okay? And it'll adapt as best it can until it's like, ugh, this is how I have to adapt by giving you eczema. Or this is how I have to adapt because I can't deal with this in this way. So I have to like slow you down. So I'm going to make you have tense legs or whatever, right? I'm giving examples of people that I've talked to in the last couple of weeks, right? And so it shifts the imbalance somewhere else. And if we don't deal with it, it can become louder, more complex until it can no longer be ignored. Okay, so we have these layer upon layers building over time, whether it's mental, emotional, survival patterning from our childhood. Our hormones will become dysregulated because of these things, right? Our metabolism will slow way down. Our microbiome gets dysbiotic in all kinds of which ways. Like, it is wild to see these tests where people's bodies like do different things and then realize what it connects to. A lot of people have like, for example, sulfur pathways that are just sluggish and faltering, and that's leading to all kinds of stuff, right? And then the connective tissue and synovial fluid dry up, and then people have, challenges with suddenly they're being tested and find out they have osteopenia or osteoporosis, and like the list could go on. I'm just sharing like top of mind from recent conversations here. But each new symptom is the body's way of saying, I'm actually still balancing what you still haven't addressed, right? And it's not like your body is like totally like a broken machine or something like that, right? Like, we got to stop looking at ourselves like that. It really is a wisdom. And it's just an adaptation. That's really the bottom line. The body's doing exactly what it needs to do to survive and communicate under the conditions that it has been given, right? And so whatever misalignment you have going on that you're like, okay, I don't like this, it didn't happen in isolation. There is no one root, right? Like, it's literally a story that spans multiple systems, physical, emotional, and even spiritual. And it could stem from before you were even born, for crying out loud. Like, seriously. So each signal carries information about our environment, our lifestyle, our inherited, genetics, right? Like, our inherited patterning, um, and all of the stresses accumulated throughout our life, both internal and external, that we've experienced over time. And so this is why we absolutely must shift the lens in which we view the body, we view healing, we view how we approach, dealing with what our body is speaking to us in symptoms, right? We're not like none of us are a collection of just like isolated organs or glands, right? Like, we know that we humans are a living dynamic ecosystem, okay? So every time you get a symptom or an imbalance or a flare up, it's really a reflection of the terrain, the foundation of the entire system, right? You and the environment you are in. So if we attempt to, say, patch one issue, if you come to me and you're like, I keep getting these migraines, what do I take? It's like, no, we're going to look at the whole, right? The body is always going to signal again in new ways. And they just become more complex and harder to unravel. So to truly support health, we really have to look at this whole ecosystem, right? We have to look at everything. And we can do that through functional nutrition, right, in many ways. But I think it goes beyond just looking at, like, I look at the minerals, I look at the microbes, I look at the gene mutations, I look at the birth chart. We want to see as much as we can, like your lifestyle, your emotional patterns, your energy, right? Like that's as much as we can to understand how it all has compiled and been woven together, right? So when you work with your body as this interconnected system, right? Not just like, oh, I have this problem on my right finger. That's been so horrible for 5 years, right? Like, it's not coming from only your right finger. You should understand, right? Um, we have to work with the body as an interconnected system, and that is how we begin to help it with its adaptation story to restore greater harmony, resilience, and honestly, function, right? And so this is the epic story of health. It's not just fixing a symptom, it's really understanding the narrative, your narrative, honoring every signal that comes to you through your body, and supporting the foundation of your whole self. Okay? We have to look at it this way. That's when that healing process really starts, but not in the way that most people expect. So, okay, so when you start working on your body, let's say you're doing it through functional lab work, right? Like mineral balancing or other restorative practices. Okay. There's often, let's say you get your game plan and you're ready to start, implementing changes to really support yourself, right? There's often this like initial wave of clarity, this initial, like, okay, great, motivation. I'm ready to do this, and you get going. And in the beginning, you feel a certain kind of like, okay, great. All right, I feel more in tune with myself. I know what's going on. I feel more hopeful. You maybe start to do some things. You might feel lighter. You might feel a little more energetic. And then over time, you keep going, and it seems like things suddenly just start to get messy, right? Not messy because it's wrong or not working. Sometimes it gets messy because now your body is working in a new way that it couldn't before. And it isn't necessarily wrinkle free. And so this is what I call the integration phase, like a recalibration. And it's a point in the cycle where your body begins sorting through old information, trying to release what it no longer needs, and trying to rewrite how it wants to function going forward. Okay, so in this phase, things can feel slow, they can feel uncertain or even uncomfortable. And you might have maybe more fatigue. You might have big emotional releases that you're just like, where did this come from? Right? You might have shifts in digestion that are kind of bumpy. Your sleep could change the patterning, right? Like you might even have some old symptoms start to resurface at some point, right? And that to a lot of people feels like regression. And I really don't think that it always is or usually is. It can be reorganization. It's like, okay, you're giving your body more. You're starting to support your nervous system by choosing to repeatedly give yourself physical, like helping to meet your physical needs in a way that you hadn't before, right? So now your nervous system's like, oh, it's like, wait, I guess let's see. what actually feels safe. Like, it's deciding, what does safe feel like to it, right? So maybe your tissues start to relax where they once were tense. Minerals might start to redistribute. Hormones might start to recalibrate. The body's like renegotiating its patterns. And this is where the deep work happens. It's like I really love nature analogies, you guys, and I think that it's like the composting phase of healing. If you've never had a compost pile, oh man, everyone probably should go and like experience gardening to some degree, or compost pile or something, right? But you can probably conceptualize this with me. Real compost, you guys, it doesn't move on command, right? It has to break down. I mean, maybe you can even imagine this like with like if you're hiking in the woods and you see like a tree break down. You ever see a tree just like start to just fall apart, right? I mean, the mushrooms get out on there and help to break it down, like turn it into something new, right? That's basically what compost is. It's like we're trying to recreate something entirely, right? Um, and that doesn't just happen like because you want it to and you've done a few things. Like, right? You can't just like dig it up and use it halfway through and expect your garden to be like, yeah, we're going to be fertile because we have half baked compost, right? Like, that's not the right term, but you get the point, right? You have to let the process mature in its own timing, right? Because there are certain factors that need to be there to allow it to do that properly, right? And the process of compost is like the right temperature, like it needs to be dark, it needs to be unseen, like it needs to have just enough of this and just enough of that and just enough moisture and right before the soil becomes rich enough to grow new life. And that's how I want us to view healing, right? It's more cyclical, not linear. We live in a culture that everything is very black and white and linear in terms of like get up, go to work, da, 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 meh, 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 right? Like very ordered and scheduled. And we've had the medical system. It's this approach. It's very rah, 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 step, 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 process, blah, 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 right? School the same way, right? And so we still are conditioned to view our bodies in this lens, right? It's also not about constantly doing more. That's another societal thing, like do, go, 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 right? It's about actually allowing your system to reorient, right? Like you got to let it do its thing. You got to let it take in these new inputs that you're giving it, whatever they are, and you got to let it reorient and you got to let it settle and you got to let it show you how it's handling these changes. And you got to let it integrate those changes that are already in motion, right? It's not like, okay, it's not changing fast enough. Let's try this next new supplement to do this and that, blah, blah, bleep, blah, bloop. Here's what's so important to understand. This phase is also, this messy middle phase, it's where the emotional and psychospiritual layers want to start to reveal themselves. This is a part a lot of people don't like. But when your body starts to feel more resourced, it can start to bring old stories, grief, tension, and patterns to the surface. It could be those things were involved in the very symptoms and signals that you are trying to break up with. Right? You might feel more sensitive. You might feel more reactive. You might feel more introspective. And that's not failure. That's not failure of the process. That's you are getting more capacity to finally deal with those things if you'll let yourself. And it means your system finally has the strength to feel what it couldn't before or wouldn't before. There is a choice here, by the way. You have to choose to actually like see those things and face them. Otherwise, you might try to shove them back down and then you're not actually going to be making progress. And so many people misread this phase and they abandon the process right here. They assume something's gone wrong or the protocol stopped working. But really, it's just the next layer asking to be witnessed and supported, right? And this is the season that when you're in it, where presence matters more than progress, where gentleness is more potent than force. And I'll be honest, it's where the role of, like a regenerative guide, someone who can offer stabilizing presence, context, support, really does become essential. Because healing isn't just like this solo act of willpower or perfect routines. I had this conversation with someone the other day. They're like, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do the thing. I'm disgusted with myself. I'm just going to do this and it's going to work. And I'm like, okay, well, you're going to have feelings arise. Things are going to it's not like you're a freaking robot, right? That's great. You need to initiate a start. Sure. Awesome. But your day-to-day life, you're not a robot, right? Like the willpower will only take you so far. You're going to have to feel how you feel, right? You're going to have relationships with people as you're doing this new thing. You're going to have things going on, right? So it is important to realize that healing happens in connection. When the environment you're in feels safer and more conducive to it, right? You have more stabilizing relationships. You have more nourishing rhythms, right? And consistent care. That is how the nervous system rewires and the terrain rebuilds. So, again, this is why I say healing happens in seasons, not instant, not instantaneous, not on demand, not seconds, right? The integration phase is the work. It's the quiet turning beneath the surface that creates the conditions for new vitality, for deeper resilience, and for lasting transformation. Okay, so what does all of this mean for you as you navigate your own healing journey? Well, I just want to say, to me, the key takeaway is like true restoration is layered, cyclical, and relational. Healing isn't about rushing, suppressing, or pushing through pain. It's about regulating presence, noticing signals, and really just honestly be honest and move at a pace your body can integrate. Can't tell you how many times people have come to me and they're like, oh, yeah, I was given this protocol by someone and I was supposed to do this, and I only did I could only handle this much of it. And they feel this like sense of wrongness about that. And I'm like, actually, it sounds like someone should have told you that's okay, because that's okay. And maybe they could help you like walk through that a little better so, you're not stuck, not feeling like wrong for only doing what you could do or even stuck, right? Do you see what I'm saying? So that's why it is important to have someone alongside of you as a steady regenerative guide, really, really helping you support your system without taking over, without forcing outcomes, without judgment, right? This is why I no longer offer single sessions, like the one-off approach. I used to do hair tissue mineral analysis consults, and it gives a lot of information. But it doesn't allow the depth, the consistency, the integration that's really needed to truly reset your terrain and build lasting resilience. So anybody knows I've been on a healing journey. I've been trying for years to heal myself. I have all these problems. Here I am. It's been 8 years. It's been 10 years. It's been whatever. And people feel the sense of I don't know if it's shame or what it is, like some kind of level of something's wrong here. And the reality is it's just not set up well, right? It's not, you're not getting proper care or education or mentorship on how this really can go. And you've probably been trying to navigate some pretty difficult terrain right? In your relationships, in your lifestyle, in the environment. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it isn't just like, I don't know. I feel like we've been sold a bill of goods of like, I should be able to do some stupid diet for 30 days and lose 10 pounds. And, it's that same concept, like brought over into, recovering from burnout or whatever it is you've got going on that's more chronic in nature, right? So I don't offer the one-time session anymore because it didn't give people enough support, and it didn't give me the chance to really get to know them relationally and understand them and see the patterns that were going on from session to session. Like, okay, what's going on? Like, let's talk about all the things, right? Like, let's clear things up. Let's talk through all the emotional stuff that you want to talk about, right? Like the whole 9 yards. Okay, and that's the other thing too is, like, healing is seasonal, right? Like, I just did my hair test back in the beginning of September. I was actually got at the end of August because I like to do them seasonally, and, we went through the end of summer into fall, okay? And a lot of things change, right? Like, the light starts changing, like, the food we eat starts changing, like, there's different things going on in the world and in your life, like, there's always going to be all these moving parts to factor in, right? And our nervous system and our body need that time. They need that patience and they need guidance to reorganize fully. But so often we interrupt that process because we're judging it or because we just don't understand it. Or we don't give it enough time or we quit or we think it's supposed to work faster or whatever, right? And I also want you to think about how many times in your life you've reached for something. Maybe like an ibuprofen, right? We've all probably reached for a painkiller. Like, I have pain in my body. I have a headache. I have this. Reach for the painkiller, right? Oh, I'm tired. Oh my God, I'm exhausted. Reach for the caffeine. Reach for the upper. I don't like how I feel. I feel frustrated, blah, whatever. Distraction, or even another new protocol. Let's try this protocol. Let me try that protocol. I don't like how I feel still. Let's try that one. Maybe that's the magic bullet, right? Because we're still trying to get rid of discomfort. And how many times was that pain actually trying to show you something? Every time, right? Every time you had a pain and you took the ibuprofen, every time you tried a new protocol, it didn't seem to work and you want to try a new one, right? All of those things that you chose to reach for, whatever you reached for, were trying to get your attention so that you could address what's really going on, integrate it, work through it, face it, peel back all the layers of the onion, not just one. It's like we want a gold star for eating grass-fed meat and going to the farmer's market. And it's like, okay, keep going. Right? You know what I mean? When we suppress, numb, or avoid the signals, we're really avoiding relationship with our own body. And like any avoidant relationship, it's usually rooted in fear. Fear of what we'll find if we slow down, fear of not knowing how to meet what arises, fear of what it might mean, right? And most of us were never taught the skills to face and feel what challenges us. I wasn't. We grew up in systems that prioritize performance, convenience, and control over attunement. Emotional intelligence wasn't modeled, not by our parents or theirs. They were often just surviving themselves, right? My grandparents were the silent generation. Silent generation is like a very true thing. They never talked. We would go hang out with them and there was no emotional anything. And so they raised children who didn't get that emotional support, and then they raised the next generation, right? Like, emotional intelligence has not been modeled. However, long ago, pre all of this, like pre-war and, when we started to kind of like create all these systems, we would have lived more in communal ways, right? And I want to paint that picture, like the more natural communities, right? Like nature-based types of communities, surrounded by elders, surrounded by multiple generations. Like your grandparents were like just as important to you as your parents because like they took care of you, they mentored you, right? There was like this shared responsibility for raising the next generation, not just practically, but in all ways and relationally. Like we were deeply taught all the ways of being as a human, right? Like we learned not only how to like gather food or tend fires, but like how to tend to our inner world and each other, right? Like how to stay connected through challenges. And that's really what's missing today. We don't just need more information. We don't just need the next latest freaking protocol. We need a version of relational repair, right? With ourselves, with our body, with someone who, can demonstrate and model what that looks like, right? So that's why we need the guidance, the mentorship, the eldership, right? Spaces where we can be deeply supported rather than simply consulted with. Because I don't think healing is meant to happen in isolation. I think it happens in connection with others, with the body, with the natural rhythms of life itself. And so that's, why I personally have pivoted in my work. And I've created 2 paths for people who want this deeper, more integrated approach. I'm just going to tell you about them really quickly. And for those of you who are interested, feel free to reach out. I have my Rewilded Wellness program. I've been sharing that with you guys lately. And this is a 6-month terrain building journey. And it combines the functional nutrition that I always talk about. And it goes into even, your genetic mutations, medical astrology, right? This is so we can see your body's signals. We can understand your terrain. We know what we're working with. And we create more of a sustainable path for your long-term wellness, right? This is where, it's you have a guide right beside you, walking you through all the ins and outs of what you are navigating as you navigate it. So that's a 6-month program. I really enjoy this program. I really, really love this work. We get into it. And then there's the minerals and microbes, which is, like more clinical, but it's also mapping your inner ecosystem using the HTMA, the biome effects, right? Where we can explore your mineral terrain, your mineral adaptations, right? Your gut microbiome, how that's adapted, right? So that we can take both and get an even better picture of like really how to restore balance for you. No forcing, no rushing. And that's over 4 guided sessions to really work on your ecosystem, learn how your mineral patterns are contributing to where you're at, right? So those are the 2 paths that I have right now for anyone who's interested in working with me on a deeper, more integrated approach for their health journey. This is like for the people who are ready to just move beyond all these quick fixes, right? And truly to start to understand the wisdom their body's really trying to communicate, right? This work requires curiosity, it requires patience, active engagement, you know. The come from is not, "Oh, my body is broken," right? Like, it's your body is asking for space, for support, for guidance to remember how to thrive, right? So if either of these resonate with you, you can click on the links below, check them out, read them through, follow the instructions on how to get started with one of those paths. Um, so this is my message for you guys today. Thank you for tuning in, for listening. I hope it met some of you today, right where you're at. You had some type of, insight that came from this episode. And I look forward to sharing more with you in a future episode. So take good care. Until next time.